Imagine waking up one morning to realize that most people around you have stopped questioning anything at all, that the world has become so loud, so fast, and so flooded with information that the human mind, once a sharp instrument for inquiry, discernment, and growth, has dulled into passive acceptance. Think about that. Think about what happens to a society when critical thinking disappears, when the ability to reason, challenge, and reflect is replaced with instant reactions, shallow opinions, and the hollow comfort of collective echo chambers. In this video, we'll uncover the unsettling truth behind the vanishing of critical thought and the dangerous rise of what some philosophers now call collective stupidity, a phenomenon where masses of people adopt superficial thinking, blindly accept convenient narratives, and surrender their intellectual independence without even realizing it. And by the end of this journey, we will confront the most urgent truth of all, one that may determine whether we reclaim our minds or lose them entirely to a system built to keep us comfortably numb. Before we dive deep, take a moment to subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. What you're about to hear may challenge your perceptions and shake the very foundations of how you see the world. Share it with those who dare to think and who still believe that truth is worth seeking. Let's begin with an uncomfortable reality. Thinking is hard, and in today's world, it's often discouraged. Modern life doesn't reward contemplation. It rewards speed, emotional reaction, and conformity. And this is no accident. From algorithms that serve you only what you already agree with, to education systems that prize memorization over exploration, society is actively steering us away from critical thought. The philosopher Noam Chomsky warned about this decades ago. In his analysis of media and propaganda, he described how power structures rely on the manufacturing of consent. In other words, when people are trained to consume without questioning, to agree without understanding, they become easy to control and even easier to deceive. Critical thinking, once seen as a fundamental human skill, has become inconvenient. It slows outrage culture, disrupts online debates, challenges ideologies, and dares to ask, but is this really true? In a world obsessed with being right, simply asking that question can feel dangerous. How did we get here? One major culprit is information overload. According to neuroscientist Daniel Levitin, the average person today processes 5 times more information daily than just a few decades ago. We are bombarded with notifications, breaking news, opinions, ads, and updates every waking moment. Our brains were never designed for this constant barrage. When overwhelmed, the brain looks for shortcuts, mental habits, cognitive biases, and groupthink. Instead of evaluating ideas critically, it seeks cues from others, especially peers, influencers, or perceived authorities. This is called social proof. It's a natural survival instinct, but it can be easily exploited. How often have you seen a post with thousands of likes and assumed it must be true or important? That isn't reason, it's a psychological shortcut, and it's one of the reasons collective stupidity spreads so easily. Not because people are unintelligent, but because they're conditioned to follow signals instead of truth. Another quiet culprit is the decline of deep reading. Neuroscientist Marianne Wolf warns that our brains are being rewired by digital media. We skim more, jump between tabs, and struggle to focus on longer texts. But critical thinking demands sustained attention. You can't analyze, reflect, or truly understand if your focus is fractured. Ask yourself, when was the last time you read an entire article without glancing at your phone? Or paused after hearing something provocative, just to think instead of react? Carl Sagan once warned, "We live in a society exquisitely dependent on science and technology, in which hardly anyone knows anything about science and technology." His fear wasn't just ignorance, it was the loss of our ability to think critically about the systems we depend on. In a world drowning in opinions, outrage, and ideological warfare, the greatest act of rebellion is the quiet discipline of thinking clearly. And yet the problem isn't only technological or educational, it's also deeply emotional. Critical thinking is uncomfortable. It forces us to admit we don't know everything. It challenges our egos. It drags us into cognitive dissonance, where our cherished beliefs collide with new, unsettling evidence. And in a culture that prizes certainty, confidence, and fixed identity above all else, that's a direct threat. So instead of thinking, we defend. We retreat into our tribes. We repeat mantras. We cancel. We avoid. We memorize slogans instead of engaging in real dialogue. The kind of open, Socratic exchange that has fueled human progress for millennia. What we're witnessing isn't just a decline in thinking, it's a cultural shift toward mental laziness. And the consequences are devastating. Because when people stop thinking, they stop questioning. And when they stop questioning, they become easy prey for manipulation, propaganda, and fear. The question we must all ask is this: who benefits when a population no longer thinks for itself? Stay with me, because what comes next will reveal just how deeply these forces are woven into our daily lives, and why reclaiming our ability to think is not just a personal challenge, but a moral responsibility. To understand the roots of this collective decline, we have to look beyond the surface, to the systems that have evolved not to nurture critical thought, but to suppress it. Let's start with the education system. John Taylor Gatto, an award-winning teacher and outspoken critic of traditional schooling, argued that modern education was never designed to produce independent thinkers. In his words, the truth is that schools don't really teach anything except how to obey orders. Gatto believed compulsory schooling was shaped during the industrial age, not to enlighten students, but to prepare them for factory life, predictable, obedient, and non-disruptive. Think about that. From the earliest years, children are evaluated not on the originality or depth of their thinking, but on their ability to memorize and repeat. Conformity is rewarded. Curiosity is treated as a distraction, and slowly the lesson becomes clear. Follow the rules, stay inside the lines, and don't ask too many questions. And this doesn't end with school, it intensifies in adult life. In the workplace, in the media, even in our friendships. We learn that speaking up, questioning consensus, or holding unpopular views can cost us. The fear of social exclusion, of being labeled difficult or controversial, is often enough to silence even our most urgent doubts. And so we stay quiet. But over time, silence becomes complicity. The psychologist Erich Fromm saw this clearly in Escape from Freedom, where he explained that many people secretly want to surrender their freedom of thought, because true freedom comes with responsibility. And responsibility can be terrifying. Thinking for yourself means you can no longer blame others for your ignorance. You can no longer take comfort in the safety of the crowd. You must face the uncertainty of truth. And for many, that's a burden too heavy to carry. So instead, we choose comfort. We choose distraction. We choose simplicity over complexity. And in doing so, we make ourselves easier to control. Social media has only supercharged this problem. What was once a tool for global connection has become a battlefield of opinion wars, outrage cycles, and algorithmic manipulation. Every platform is designed to keep you scrolling, reacting, consuming, not thinking. You are constantly nudged toward content that confirms your beliefs. You are pushed to respond instantly, emotionally, and often angrily. Platforms reward engagement, not truth. They thrive on division, not understanding. And in the middle of all this noise, the voice of reason is drowned out. Thoughtfulness feels slow. It feels weak. It feels irrelevant. Why reflect when reacting is faster and gets you more likes? The media philosopher Marshall McLuhan saw this coming in the 1960s. He warned that the medium is the message, meaning the way we consume information reshapes how we think. And today's mediums reward speed over depth, outrage over nuance, and certainty over humility. Even truth itself has been warped. In the age of misinformation, what's true often matters less than what's viral. People no longer judge ideas by evidence or logic. They judge them by how many people agree. This is the tyranny of the majority in its most dangerous form, not political, cognitive. So where do we go from here? We start by asking better questions, questions that pierce the comfort of consensus, questions that demand real answers, not slogans, not statistics stripped of context. What are you being told to believe? Who benefits if you believe it? What assumptions are hiding beneath your certainty? How often do you seek out opposing views, not to attack them, but to truly understand them? These questions are not easy, but they're necessary. Because the antidote to collective stupidity is not just intelligence, it's courage. Courage to be wrong, courage to learn, courage to admit you don't know, and to begin the journey of knowing anyway. Socrates, one of history's earliest defenders of critical thinking, famously said, "The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing." This wasn't self-deprecation. It was an invitation, an open door to stay curious, to keep asking, to remain intellectually humble in the face of a vast and mysterious world. Yet today, humility is rare. Certainty is worshipped. Arrogance is mistaken for wisdom. Everyone has an opinion, but few have understanding. Everyone wants to speak, but almost no one wants to listen. The irony is that true thinkers are often quiet, observant, reserved. They understand that wisdom doesn't grow in the noise. It grows in the silence, in contemplation, in deep, sustained engagement with complexity. And that's precisely why critical thinkers are outnumbered and so often ignored. In a culture obsessed with speed and spectacle, the slow, deliberate act of thinking doesn't stand a chance, but it must never be abandoned. Because the moment you surrender your ability to think for yourself, you are no longer free. You are a puppet, your strings pulled by forces you may never see. And make no mistake, those forces are real. They are economic, political, cultural. They are the corporations profiting from your addiction to mindless content, the politicians who thrive on your emotional reactions, the institutions that depend on your unquestioning obedience. But the moment you reclaim your mind, everything changes. You become harder to manipulate. You begin to see through the illusion. You stop being a passive consumer of ideas and become an active seeker of truth. And in that act, however small, you spark a fire that has burned through centuries in philosophers, scientists, revolutionaries, and truth-tellers who refuse to stop thinking. So the question is, will you do the same? Stay with me, because in the next part we're going deeper. We'll uncover the psychology behind collective thinking and reveal why even the most intelligent people fall into these traps. You'll see how the human brain can be tricked into believing not what's true, but what it wants to be true. Because to understand collective stupidity, we have to explore the battlefield inside the mind itself. Despite our faith in logic, the truth is this: the human brain is far more emotional than rational. We like to believe our decisions are based on facts, but reality is messier. In Thinking Fast and Slow, Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman revealed that our minds operate with two distinct systems. One is fast, instinctive, emotional, automatic. It leaps to conclusions, makes snap judgments, and conserves mental energy. The other is slow, deliberate, analytical, cautious. It seeks truth, but it demands effort. And here lies the problem. In our high-speed, always-on world, most people are locked in fast mode. There's no time and often no will to slow down and think deeply. So we lean on heuristics, stereotypes, and mental shortcuts. They feel right, but are often wrong. This is the perfect breeding ground for manipulation. Politicians, marketers, and media outlets know exactly how to exploit these shortcuts. They package complexity into simple binaries. They lace their words with emotional triggers to bypass reason. They repeat the same narratives until they feel familiar, and therefore true. Once we accept something as truth, our brains begin to defend it, no matter the evidence against it. This is confirmation bias, one of the most powerful cognitive traps in existence. So ask yourself, how often do you actively seek out evidence that challenges your own beliefs? How often do you truly listen to opposing arguments instead of preparing your counterattack? If you're honest, the answer is probably not as often as you think. And that's not a personal flaw, it's human nature. But it becomes dangerous when we aren't aware of it. Another mental trap is groupthink, a phenomenon where the desire for harmony in a group leads to irrational, even disastrous decisions. It's been behind corporate collapses, political blunders, and historical atrocities. People silence their doubts to keep the peace. They choose consensus over truth. Irving Janis, the social psychologist who coined the term, found that even the most intelligent, well-intentioned people can make catastrophic errors when dissent is suppressed. Why? Because challenging the group feels unsafe. Because going against the grain takes more than intelligence. It takes integrity. It takes courage. And yet, history's greatest leaps forward have always come from those who dared to defy the crowd. Galileo, Darwin, Nietzsche, Martin Luther King Jr. Every one of them was rejected, ridiculed, or attacked for their ideas, until the truth they carried could no longer be denied. But they thought anyway. They spoke anyway. And their willingness to challenge the collective ignorance of their time shaped the very world we live in today. Make no mistake, there is a cost. To think critically in a society that punishes doubt is an act of rebellion. You risk being misunderstood, ostracized, even hated. But you also gain something far more valuable: clarity, self-respect, and the quiet power that comes from knowing your beliefs are truly yours, not programmed into you. Now let's bring this closer to home. Why do so many of us feel lost, anxious, or unfulfilled, despite having more information and technology than any generation before us? The answer isn't in what we've gained, it's in what we've lost. And one of our greatest losses is the habit of inner dialogue, the ability to sit with a question, wrestle with it, and allow truth to emerge through reflection. We've outsourced our thinking to machines, to media, to public opinion. But no algorithm can tell you what is true for you. No trending topic can replace your inner voice. No mass movement can substitute for the quiet certainty of a well-examined belief. So what can we do? We can start by cultivating awareness. Awareness of our mental habits. Awareness of the sources we consume. Awareness of the moments when we're truly thinking and when we're simply reacting. One powerful practice is metacognition, thinking about your thinking. Ask yourself, what's influencing my opinion right now? Am I open to being wrong? Am I engaging with this idea or just absorbing it passively? Another is the deliberate practice of dialectical thinking, the ability to hold two opposing ideas in tension while exploring them. This isn't just intellectual flexibility, it's mental strength. It allows you to move beyond binaries, beyond us versus them, into the realm where real understanding lives. The philosopher Jiddu Krishnamurti once said, "To understand the immeasurable, the mind must be extraordinarily quiet, still." That stillness, so rare in our age, is where the seeds of wisdom grow. But let's speak plainly. Critical thinking is not something you acquire overnight. It is a discipline. It demands reading, not just headlines, but books, full arguments, and nuanced thought. It demands listening, not just to those you agree with, but especially to those you don't. It demands humility, the kind that accepts uncertainty as part of the path. And above all, it demands the rejection of intellectual laziness. If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. If everyone around you believes something without question, that's your cue to pause. Not to rebel automatically, but to investigate honestly. In a time when ignorance is loud and confidence is often mistaken for competence, thinking deeply is not just a personal virtue, it's a public service. Because the future of any society depends not on the volume of its opinions, but on the quality of its thought. And the most powerful change doesn't begin with mass movements. It begins with one person who chooses to think clearly in a world that doesn't. In the final part of this journey, we'll uncover the most important truth of all, the core reason critical thinking is disappearing, and how you can not only resist this tide, but become a light for others. What you're about to hear could change how you see your mind, your relationships, and your role in shaping the world. Beneath the digital noise, the failing institutions, the cultural polarization, there is something deeper, something more insidious. The real reason critical thinking is disappearing is not that people can't do it, it's that they're afraid of what it might reveal. To think critically is to risk everything that gives us psychological safety, our identity, our beliefs, our tribe. And for many, those things are too precious to question. We live in a time when identity has become sacred. People define themselves by their opinions, their affiliations, their ideologies. To challenge an idea is now seen as a personal attack. But this is the great illusion, that we are our ideas. You are not your political party. You are not your religion. You are not your social group. You are a human being with the capacity to evolve, to learn, to change. And that journey begins the moment you detach your worth from your current beliefs. The final and most important truth is this. Critical thinking is not just an intellectual skill. It is a spiritual act. It is the act of honoring truth over comfort, growth over certainty, freedom over approval. It is the quiet decision to live with your eyes open, even when the light burns. Because once you start thinking critically, you begin to see the invisible architecture of the world around you, its structures of manipulation, its algorithms of control, the carefully crafted masks people wear. And the truth is, it can be overwhelming. It can even hurt. But it is real. And reality, no matter how uncomfortable, is the only ground upon which true freedom can stand. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. Yet facing our inner world, our unconscious motives, our inherited beliefs, our mental blind spots, is the very essence of thinking." Critical thinking isn't just about questioning the world. It's about questioning yourself. It's about asking, why do I believe what I believe? Where did this idea come from? Which parts of me are afraid to let it go? When you dare to answer those questions honestly, a new world unfolds. Not just a world of knowledge, but of wisdom. And wisdom is what our culture is starving for. In a society addicted to quick answers, wisdom demands deeper questions. In a world built on noise, wisdom offers silence. In an era of mass conformity, wisdom dares to be free. This is your invitation, not just to think, but to awaken. To stop living as a product of your environment and start becoming the architect of your own mind. Because no school, no system, no social media platform will do this for you. The responsibility is yours alone. And when you take it seriously, something extraordinary happens. You begin to see with clarity. You feel what it's like to live in alignment with truth. Not borrowed truth, not fashionable truth, but your own hard-earned truth. You start noticing when manipulation is aimed at you. You see the difference between information and propaganda, between education and indoctrination, between connection and performance. And most importantly, you begin to lead, not with noise, not with ego, but with depth. You become a light in a dark room, a calm voice in a storm of outrage, a grounded thinker in a world of reactionaries. What the world needs now is not louder voices or sharper arguments, but deeper minds. Minds willing to live in complexity. Minds willing to say, I don't know, but I'm willing to learn. Minds that care less about winning debates and more about understanding reality. If you want to change the world, start by changing the way you think. Not because it's easy, not because it's popular, but because it's right. The rise of collective stupidity is not the cause. It's the symptom. A symptom of fear, exhaustion, and a world too distracted to look inward. But every act of clear thinking pushes back against that tide. Every time you pause instead of react, question instead of assume, choose clarity over comfort, you reclaim your power. So as we end this journey, remember, the most revolutionary thing you can do is not to shout, not to conform, not to repeat, but to think. Let the others sleepwalk through slogans and screens. Let them trade their freedom for validation, but not you. You are awake now, and once you awaken, you can never truly go back. If this message speaks to you, share it, not because it's trending, but because it's necessary. Leave your reflections, your doubts, your insights below. Because critical thinking doesn't grow in silence, it grows in dialogue. And if you're still here, know this, you are not alone. There is a quiet revolution rising, not of noise, but of minds, not of outrage, but of awareness. And it begins every time one person dares to ask the harder question. Let that person be you. Stay curious, stay awake, and above all, keep thinking.